Happy Hump Day Wednesday, everybody, from the press box here on the Right Team Podcast. I'm David Weaver, and I'm once again excited to be joined by my co-host, the pastor of Friendship Baptist Church in Marshall, and also sports director of KMHT 103.9 FM, the heartbeat of East Texas in Marshall, Brother Matt Paul. Matt, it was an emotional night for most folks around East Texas that are experiencing senior night. I know it hit you kind of personally last night. Kind of got your youngest son experienced his senior night. How did all of that go there in Maverick Gym for you guys?
It was good. It was really good. Kind of chaotic. Like, I didn't really have time to be emotional. It was one of these deals where a lot of the senior night plans kind of fell to me as sort of the for lack of a better term, the program director for basketball games, as far as national anthem, starting lineup, halftime entertainment, all that kind of stuff. So trying to get all the people lined up and where they needed to be. We had 9 seniors, counting the managers that we were recognizing. So it was a little chaotic. Obviously, I had to do my son last because, I had to walk out there with him. My mom was in town. It was a good night. But people were asking me, were you getting emotional? And I was exhausted. I didn't really, I literally got there at 4:30, and I don't know that I sat down until I sat down to call the game at, 7:30 or 7:45 or whatever. So it was kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I don't know that we've mentioned this. Maybe we did back in football season, but not only are you the pastor of Friendship, not only are you the sports director of KMHT, not only do you jump on the podcast with me every day now, but you also are the basically press box coordinator, game manager coordinator at Maverick Stadium and at Maverick Gym, right? I mean, so I don't know where you find time to sleep, to be honest, but hopefully you do, or you just live on coffee, I'm guessing.
No, it sleeps pretty easy. You go home and you're pretty tired. So, it's kind of nice.
You always find a way to know everything about college basketball. Somehow you work that in as well.
Yeah, I got home. Excuse me. I got home last night. I don't remember what time it was because, we thankfully Chase Palmer and Andy Chilcote did the broadcast last night because Tristan Lundy at KMHT was out at Elysian Fields, the Elysian Fields girls game. But I had to break down all the radio equipment and bring that back. But I got home last night and plopped down on the couch and immediately turned on and watched the last 3 minutes of Nebraska and Iowa. And then, of course, the Texas Tech game was on late. So anyway, yeah, it was still found time to get it in where I could.
I think you probably would work that out for sure. Before we get going here, let's jump right into it. We do want to thank our podcast sponsors who support our podcast and kind of make it all possible. East Texas Baptist University combines strong academics with championship-level athletics and a Christ-centered mission that impacts every part of campus life. If you're looking for a university that values faith, competition, and community, ETBU is worth checking out. And today's show is also brought to you by Stiles Electric, based right here in East Texas with offices in Longview and Mount Pleasant. Stiles Electric has been providing dependable, professional electrical work for over a quarter century in East Texas and beyond. When experience matters, Stiles Electric delivers service that speaks for itself. And finally, today's episode is also brought to you again by Right Team Services. At Right Team Services, we help schools, small businesses, and nonprofits turn ideas into impact through effective writing, clear messaging, and meaningful connection across your websites and social media platforms. When you need results but don't quite have the words to say, let Right Team Services provide the voice that you need. Contact us today at 903-926-1766 and learn more about how we can help you tell your story. Okay, I'm going to save explaining the reason why I have our backdrop today, Matt. I don't know if you have recognized it yet. It's
I hadn't even. I'll be honest, I hadn't even looked at it.
It's actually a stadium that's no longer in use here, but one that I don't know if you're from Texas in general. You probably this is kind of an iconic look for you, but it is the Houston Astrodome.
Astrodome, yeah.
And I'm going to tie that in here later on in the show. on my headline or back page part, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Let's start off running down our high school action from yesterday. And I want to preface this by saying we're not going to go down through all of the scores here on the podcast. If you have not caught your team score or would like to just see what the general scores were in the area last night, I have posted the girls basketball scores that have been updated to include every score from the area on our Right Team Podcast Facebook page. So just go there and follow our Facebook page, and you'll catch all the final scores from all the bi-district playoff action the last couple of nights. Did want to make a few mentions here, though, of some things that kind of stood out here from the first round of the playoffs. Matt, Whitehouse takes it on the chin, man.
Gosh,
got to feel sick if you're fan of the Lady Wildcats, and wow, what a season! 35-0, number 3 in the state, and they get into the playoffs and just have an off night. And Anna takes them down 53-46 on Tuesday and ends their season at 35-1.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the biggest takeaway for me from the girls' night, and it's that whole thing. How good are you? We'll find out when you play a team from the DFW area. In football, it's not always that way. But in basketball, in a state where football is king, basketball is usually, unless you go down to like, the 2A and 3A levels, basketball is usually dominated by the big cities. And so when you're out here in East Texas and you're having to play a team from the Houston area or a team from the San Antonio area or a team from Austin or a team from Dallas, that's where you find kind of where the rubber meets the road. And my goodness, Stunner, the number 3 team in the state, doesn't make it out of the first round.
And you bring up an interesting point, and we've talked about it before here, running into bi-district to get some of those metro area teams, and particularly in basketball, volleyball, softball, baseball, you see it a lot. Those are your toughest matchup will be your probably bi-district or area round. If you can get out of that, you can make a deep run. But I wanted to, and you brought up something interesting there that it's just kind of a quick topic here to discuss, but of course your background and roots are in Arkansas. And you mentioned Texas is a football state. Texas football is king here. I think we all acknowledge that. Is it different up there from your neck of the woods, so to speak? I do know as you get further north, particularly in the Midwest, you do start to see basketball actually become the sport of choice in some of those states. Indiana, Illinois, places like that. What's it like in Arkansas, which is a neighboring state to Texas?
Arkansas has pockets where football is huge. In Texas is the pocket, right? I mean, it's just kind of what it is. You go into Northwest Arkansas where the Fayetteville teams, the Fort Smith teams, all the little suburbs of Fayetteville that have become giant cities of their own. Football is very high level there. There's strong football in Central Arkansas, not just in Little Rock, but Benton and Bryant, Conway, things like that. But the basketball there, and I can tell you, I've got a son who's a referee up there for high school basketball in Northwest Arkansas. And this is a kid who played, well, he's 21, but who played basketball here in East Texas. Said that it's a totally different animal. It's a totally different ball game. Most of the teams from East Texas couldn't hold a candle to the good teams up here. Right. So it is, basketball is a little different in Arkansas. It's definitely, I think, higher level, higher quality. One of the biggest struggles that I think I've seen, speaking of my son who's an official, has been watching officiating in East Texas. I was at I shared yesterday, I was at the Hooks Chapel Hill girls game Monday night. One of the best probably the best officiating crew I've seen at Maverick Gymnasium. Those 3 ran the game well. They had control. They gave coaches leeway without losing control. They were concise. They were confident in their calls. They communicated with each other. Every boys and girls game that I've seen at Maverick Gymnasium has been a football game. And I'm not saying it favors one team over the other. Like the number of times you could hear skin getting slapped last night on a kid, not just randomly dribbling. I'm talking about going up for a shot and nothing's called. Shoving happens left and right. Like part of the reason I think East Texas teams struggle when they go into the playoffs is they play a certain way because of the way the officials call it. And then they get to where there's high quality officials calling the game right and they don't know how to respond to it.
Really, really good point that you're making there. And I agree with you on that. I have not watched a whole lot of high school basketball recently, but it hasn't changed much since I did, sounds like. And I don't know how you fix that because a lot of these officials will also call ETBU on Thursday or Saturday, and you see it there as well in the college game. And I don't know if it's so much as officiating taking over a game, or maybe they just don't really know how to call a game correctly and cleanly, and without just completely getting a whole new set of referees, which is a whole nother problem itself across the entire state. I don't, you just have to hope that you catch a crew on a night in which they really feel like swallowing their whistle a little bit or blowing, calling fouls more, one way or the other.
And I want to be clear. I don't want to say these are, I'm not trying to say it's terrible officiating. I'm just saying, and there are a couple, like I can point out to you if there's a couple officials that I see at Maverick Gymnasium that I think are good, that call the game in a way that for high school basketball enables you to better keep the game in check. Because, you let that game get physical, you're asking for it. And the problem is never do I see those two officials on the court at the same time. Sometimes you don't even see one of them. And then it kind of becomes what it is. But yeah, I don't know how you fix it either. I mean, I know the common cry is, well, if you know the game so well, get out there and officiate. And well, okay, I'm in sports media. I have a son playing on the team. Don't know what I'm supposed to do about that.
Conflict of interest there.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, but it's it's not an easy job. I want to acknowledge that first and foremost. It is not an easy job, but especially in a game with high school kids and in East Texas, it's a game where they know football. That's what they tend to know. You better have someone that can get control of that game quickly, or you end up, and then what happens? You end up having a fight, and it's all about, well, those kids or those adults need to keep them in charge. If the referees take control of the game, sometimes you can avoid that. So we'll see.
It really comes down to being the number one thing that you have to do is just be consistent. If you're going to call it physical, call it physical. If you're going to back off the reins a little bit and let them play, then you let them play the entire game. And then at that point, the coach is responsible for adjusting his team to however the game's being called.
Yeah.
You can't one quarter call it physical and then blow your whistle and then swallow it the next quarter. It doesn't work that way.
Yep, no doubt.
And so interesting little take there that we got down that rabbit hole. I don't know how we did that, but good job.
Yeah.
Also last night, it was a top 25 matchup between number 17 Canton and number 23 Spring Hill, and the Lady Eagles come away with a 46-39 win over the Lady Panthers. So Canton is advancing with a tough win over Spring Hill.
Good game.
That was the only actual top 25 head-to-head matchup that we had in our area on Tuesday. So a pretty good game, and it was a late game. It didn't get started until 8:00. So
yeah.
And the other one of local, the only other one of local note that I wanted to bring out here was, of course, the Elysian Fields Lady Jackets, and we've talked about their late season run here, kind of a Cinderella type season to get into the playoffs. They had to win a playoff play-in game last week to get there, but their run ends on Tuesday with a 63-35 loss to San Augustine. They're in the bi-district round, a game that was played down in Garrison. And I know you guys had planned to broadcast this game, but following Tristan Lundy on social media, he had some issues when he got down there with the internet, and and cell service and things like that. So I know he was upset that y'all were unable to actually get that on the air. But he did. Hey man, and I've talked to you about Tristan before. He's a real deal. He found a way to get the score out and keep people informed, and did a great job with that. On top of all the frustration I know he was experiencing in that game.
That area is the land that internet forgot. It is so hard to get service, and it's right in that neck of the woods is Gary. That's where Harleton's playing Friday night, so we're going to see what develops there. But I do want to talk a little bit about this game. I had Coach Mark Kendrick Bell of the Legion Fields girls on my show this morning, and not to go into detail, but that was kind of a chaotic situation for the girls basketball team at Elysian Fields. I know you know that, and he's kind of got to walk into it. This is a guy that if you followed local sports, like super close right here to where we are. I mean, he was a star at Tatum in both football and basketball, played football at TJC and then went to Sam Houston. So, those are two programs that are not anything to sneeze at if you're playing football at those two programs. And now here he is coaching girls basketball. And, I really think it just took the Lady Jackets a while, understandably so, to kind of get caught up to the system, get bought in, get on the same page. But once they did, I think they got a lot to hold their heads high about this season.
Absolutely. And they did the one thing that you always want your team to be doing, which is peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think you can say above anything else that Coach Bell had this team peaking at the exact right time that you want them to peak. And they got into the playoffs because of it. And really that game, based on the updates we were getting from Tristan, was a lot closer than the final score would appear. I think it was a 7-point game at halftime.
Yeah.
And so hats off again to the Lady Jackets. Nice run there down in Elysian Fields. The boys are coming up here now with their playoff run that will start next week, of course.
Yeah.
Moving on to the boys here. Matt, what were some things that maybe stuck out to you from last night? And again, I'm going to have these scores from last night actually posted on our Facebook page if you want to track down all the scores of your favorite team. But we're just going to talk here about a couple of games of interest that stood out.
Well, obviously, and I'm going to talk about this a little later on the back page, just going to kind of reflect on senior night at Marshall. But I don't know if you saw this. So I've heard of Birdville, Texas. I don't know exactly where it is. I don't know if you know where Birdville, Texas is. So their head coach for the boys tweeted out Monday. It's kind of a crazy thing. He said, "We're playing tomorrow night. We're currently a 1 seed, and if we win, we could drop to a 2 seed." Which I was like, okay, I gotta dig into this. So I look at responses to the tweet. And essentially, you know how, and this is something I think worth talking about. You know how we now have, okay, 4 teams from your district make it, right? But the 2 bigger ones go on to the D1 bracket and the 2 smaller ones go to the D2 bracket, right? So what I end up seeing happen is I'm like, how do you how do you drop in seeding if you win the game? By winning the game, they kicked a team out of the playoffs and allowed a new team to get into the playoffs. And so that changed if they were going to the big bracket or the small bracket with that new team that was going. They were second in their district, but they were the top one of the division they were in. But since it made them switch divisions, they were now in the same division as the team that was on the top of it. And so he tweeted out a response last night and said, "Update, we won and we dropped to the 2 seed." I just think I think it's a rare thing. I'm not saying that this is one of those things. And I see where they are now. They're in with Denton and Colleyville Heritage, Richland, Grapevine. But essentially what they did by beating Denton Ryan, they allowed another team to get in. It changed their classification, and now they're in the same. So it was one of these deals where you're like, should we lose? Should we lose this game?
Tank that one. That's the old tank question.
Yeah, and it was probably their senior night. I don't know if they were at home, so they probably didn't want to do it, but it's just kind of crazy to me. I thought that was so it's not too far away. I mean, if you're talking Denton and Colleyville and all the rest, but how wild is that they dropped a seed by winning the game?
And possibly win a game and put yourself in a tougher bracket to ultimately do what you want to do. Yeah, that's an interesting question that you can look at. And again, we're going to touch on that a little bit here when we get into our headliner section about the NBA. Is there ever a time when it's advisable to tank? And personally, and I'll expand on this a little bit more. I think you always lean on the side of winning.
Yeah,
personally, and I'm that's kind of a teaser into what we'll talk about later. But that is an interesting situation for a coach to be in.
Yeah.
For sure.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, especially on senior night. That throws a little bit more spice into it. Do you
Yeah.
throw a game on senior night? Kind of interesting. A couple of things here from playoff perspective on the boys' side that I noticed from last night. So we mentioned yesterday about what was going on in District 16 4A. You had Gilmer and Carthage were tied for the final playoff spot in that district. The other three had been decided. And so depending on what happened last night, one or the other was going to get in. Gilmer did hold the tiebreaker advantage over Carthage. Both of those teams lost last night. Kilgore defeated Gilmer 71-53, and then district champ Chapel Hill defeated Carthage 83-67. So based on the standings and Gilmer's head-to-head tiebreaker with Carthage, the Buckeyes are going to the playoffs as the fourth seed from District 16 4A. And then another similar situation, kind of a play-in game in District 16 3A. Teams already in going into Tuesday's action were Troop Tatum and Gladewater. We had West Rusk and ARP playing each other head-to-head, basically in what was a play-in game. The winner goes to the playoffs, and West Rusk defeated ARP 66-50. So the Raiders have grabbed that final spot there in District 16 3A.
Good for them. Those play-in games, that's like the playoffs start early. I love that.
Yeah, and I really like that because you get to play it on Tuesday rather than having to play on Friday, and then basically just get the weekend to prepare for by district. So now that team, you get basically a full week going into it. And some of those games have already been scheduled. Some of these teams are scheduling some practice games, if you will, some warm-up games later this week. And we may share some of those again on our Facebook page. Follow us on Facebook for some things that maybe go into a little bit more detail in terms of scores and things like that and schedules. So that's going to do it for our what I call the Beast Texas segment of the podcast. Let's segue now quickly into March Madness, which you are a resident expert here, and give us a little bit of your takes from what the action that went around the country last night on the men's side.
Let me
what
first
you were able to see.
Yeah, let me just first say Michigan. That game with Duke looms large on Saturday because if Michigan takes care of business there, they may be currently a team of one. They may be a category unto themselves. Purdue is not an easy place to play. Purdue is a very good team and a senior-led, experienced team. And Michigan went in there and won by 11 last night. Just didn't really ever seem threatened. So that obviously stands out. But boy, okay, so some funny stories, but also some bubble teams. And I want to start with the bubble teams. Iowa getting a huge win at home over Nebraska. Iowa was on the good side of the bubble, but you never like to be on the bubble. Winning a game like that helps you move off the bubble. North Carolina State massacred North Carolina in that rivalry game. That helped them move on the right side of the bubble, maybe even off the bubble. SMU got a big win at home over Louisville. Same deal with them. Miami edged out Virginia Tech. Same deal with Miami. Virginia Tech is trying to get in. They probably needed that one. Georgia, a huge win at Kentucky. That kind of pushes them maybe off the bubble. And I tell you, it wasn't easy, but Texas just keeps inching further and further to the good side of that bubble. They got a big win. So I've kind of got three that I want to talk about today on college basketball. But the first one is bubble teams uh, doing what they needed to do to maybe say, get us off that bubble and talk about somebody else.
Yeah, and just kind of a heads up again, you debuted Back Row Bracketology earlier this week, which is Matt's kind of swing at coming up with his own bracketology, and does a really good job of that. Hopefully you saw our show on, I believe it was Monday that you brought that out. And
that'll come every Thursday and Monday.
Yes, and so tomorrow we will update that and see where Matt bracketology is on that one. Very intriguing part of our show that we've introduced this week. On the women's side, there wasn't a whole lot of action. Of course, there really isn't on Tuesdays. They play Wednesday and even later into the week. But there was one top 25 matchup, of course, Ole Miss and Tennessee. 94-81, the Lady Rebels take that one to even Tennessee in the SEC standings at 8-4. So, but that was it for top 25 action on the women's side. That'll be coming up here. A lot of games tonight, actually.
Yeah, lot tonight. There's a couple things I wanted to see if you noticed in college basketball on the men's side last night. Did you see Mick Cronin of UCLA kick his own player out? And it was there were levels to how hilarious this was. So Mick Cronin, I mean, by all accounts, he's a great coach. But if you've ever watched him, your first thought's going to be he's an angry little man. And his player committed a hard and really unsafe foul. He got a flagrant one. Mick just didn't even. He just told him to go to the locker room. Just get out. The game was already in hand. So in the post-game interview, I don't know if you saw, Tom Izzo was asked about it, and Tom said that I guess Mick upgraded it to a flagrant 2, which I thought was really kind of funny. But then Mick Cronin was asked about the Michigan State's student section chanting the name of one of his players. And his response was so good. He said, I couldn't give a rat's, fill in the part of the anatomy, about what their student section does. In fact, I'd rather talk about giving you kudos for the stupidest question I've ever had in a press conference. Man, I want to hear more from Mick Cronin. That's so good. I loved it.
As a former sports writer, I didn't get to experience anything like that sitting in a press conference. But on the other end of it now, after having worked for so long, actually on the other side with coaches and doing media relations and things like that, I can kind of have an affinity for some coaches who sit there and throw that back a little bit for dumb questions, or questions that actually have nothing to do with the actual game that was just played, and just trying to stir some things up kind of deal with that. And I tell you what, Vic Schaefer, the women's coach at Texas, is really good at that too.
He is
really good at that.
And only other thing I noticed, and I feel like this has to be talked about, the big upset out in the desert last night, Arizona State beating Texas Tech, but that's not even the biggest news out of that. Wondering if JT Toppin, a candidate for National Player of the Year, one of the best players in the country. It's gotten to where the worst phrase you can hear in sports is non-contact leg injury. And of course, we're big Red Raiders in our house with my wife having graduated from there. That is a national title contending team, but I don't know that they are without him. So hoping that is something that within a week or two, it's nothing major and he can bounce back. But that was scary last night.
Yeah, and you and I were just talking a couple of days ago about Texas Tech and how no one is going to want to see them at all in the tournament. And possibly 3 seed, maybe could play their way up into a 2 seed kind of deal. With the way they're playing here late, but it's injuries are the ultimate equalizer at any sport at any level, and it's hard to say that it's the beauty of sport because that's really not the right word.
Right.
When it comes to an injury, but you just never know how certain things that take place off the court, i.e. injuries, can affect a season, a team on any given night. How is that
Yeah.
going to affect Texas Tech's overall fortunes? We'll see down the stretch here, but you never want to see that, particularly with your superstar players, for sure.
For sure. Hate to see it.
Some headliners here, just kind of outside the normal flow of our show here, but things that have popped up, particularly on a national level. This was a very interesting thing that came down pretty much early yesterday. And when you first see the headline or the alert that you get on your phone, Tony Clark resigns as MLBPA's chief, you think, oh, this has something to do with the looming labor dispute that's coming on in baseball. But then as things kind of unraveled throughout the afternoon, there was a lot more that went into this particular resignation. He was having an inappropriate relationship with his sister-in-law, who he had hired on his staff there with the Players Association, and a lot of other things going on here. That is the worst possible time for something like this to happen if you're a Major League Baseball player in your union, because you're about to enter into probably the most significant labor negotiation maybe in the history of sports in America.
Yes.
To Major League Baseball, and now you don't have a union chief, and they don't have a whole lot of time to figure this out. I know there was an emergency call with the player reps yesterday, and they didn't really decide anything based on what you hear coming out of that call. So I don't know where they go here. They got Major League Baseball apparently sitting on the other side of the table, probably holding all the cards, at least in these negotiations. And it's just another unfortunate. We're headed to a labor stoppage, unless someone literally pulls a rabbit out of the hat. I don't see how they avoid maybe the longest work stoppage in baseball.
Yeah, and when you're already, if you're close to, if you follow Major League Baseball closely, you're already a little jaded, right? Because that's coming, and then you add this to it, and they're not making themselves any fans.
Ironically, the owners are probably a little bit upset about this too, because with Tony Clark as the head of the MLBPA, they've gotten just about everything they've ever wanted in a negotiation with him at the head of the table. He tries. He does. His number one goal is to have players not miss checks.
Right.
And so in doing that, he's throughout his time there, he has acceded a lot to the demands of the owners in many ways, and it's kept his players on the field. It's kept them getting checks, but they're the things that surround all of that don't necessarily favor the players with some of the rule changes and scheduling and things like that. And who knows now who they're going to get there. It could be more of a hardliner, and this could make things even worse.
Yeah.
So anyway, kind of another black mark against baseball yesterday as they head down this road that is not going to be pretty again, unless a miracle happens.
Yeah.
Shifting over to, we were speaking about tanking earlier. This was the most bizarre thing, and I actually went and read Cuban's as much as I could of his little rant on Twitter. He had a couple of posts on Twitter. It was almost like a blog post, but I mean, he is literally promoting the NBA actually championing tanking. I'm not going to go into all the details of what he said, because I think a lot of it he's just being Mark Cuban and waving a flag. And I know we talked about, I think it was last week when this story broke about him potentially trying to put a group together to buy back the Mavs. Again, I think this is just more blowing smoke to try to keep himself in the headlines. And the more he speaks, the more I'm like, I want him to stay far away from basketball as possible. With this idea, who on earth would? And again, I fall back always. I always fall back on you never go wrong by winning. Never go wrong by winning. I don't care if it's draft choices. Now I know and I'm kind of contradicting myself, I know, because if you pull up past episodes, I was all about tanking for the Cowboys, but that's a whole different story than say the Mavs right now. Because 2 years ago they were in the NBA Finals. We're talking about 30 years for the Cowboys. And they could tank. They've been tanking for 30 years, and it doesn't matter, right? And so,
Yeah.
go tank some more, right? It doesn't matter anymore. With an NBA team that is so blatantly doing this, and it's not just Dallas. I honestly don't know that Dallas is in full tank mode right now.
Right.
It's hard to tell that with Cooper Flag on the floor, but teams like Utah and a couple of these other teams where they are literally pulling their starters midway through the second half in a tight ball game, and playing the bottom five on their bench. That's tanking, and I don't know how they fix it in the NBA. They've tried all kinds of different formulas with the lottery and things like that, and teams still do it. They're willing to take the chance, especially in a draft class like we've said here on the show that is as loaded as it is at the top. But this idea of the NBA as a league embracing it, I think that's a slap in the face of fans and our intelligence, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm torn on it. I mean, I've read some of Cuban's responses or remarks, and they're a little out there, just like he is.
Always.
But it's so different in the pro game. I mean, if you ask me, would I rather my team be in that 9-10 play-in game where they've got to win 2 games just to get the 8 seed to go play somebody like the Thunder? Or would I like for them to be in the bottom 5 of the league, especially in a draft class like this? I'd rather them be in the bottom 5 of the league.
Right.
I don't see the worst thing you can be is mediocre. That's just the way it is in professional sports. Mediocre teams stay mediocre. Bad teams, if they have bad ownership, stay bad. Bad teams, if they have good ownership, have a shot to become good. I think it's, for me, it's pretty obvious. If you want to, we've got all these in-season tournaments and play-in tournaments now. It's if you want to avoid tanking, then for me it's pretty simple. You go back to taking the top 8 in each one, but the next 4, 9 through 12 in each conference, have an 8-game tournament for the number 1 pick. It's easy.
Around is that you almost have to go out and play to earn it. You have to go out and play to earn it.
At that point, if you want to tank, you don't even make that tournament. If you finish in the bottom 3 of your conference, you don't make the tournament. Mm-hmm. So you have no shot at the number 1 pick.
That would be an interesting idea. Say, on off days of the NBA playoffs, you have a 2-week tournament going on of teams that are in the lottery that are literally playing number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and you actually earn the top pick by winning on the court to do that. And I think that would be interesting. You'd have basketball on every night, and certainly the teams that are in the lottery, their fans would be invested in that. It's a neat idea. Let's send that to the league office.
Okay, I'll let you do that. A couple of
get it to Cuban. Let's get him behind it. He can.
Let me give you an example right here. The Charlotte Hornets and the Portland Trail Blazers. They're 2 young teams that are, Charlotte's 26-29, but they've won 9 out of 10. Portland's 27-29. These are mediocre teams, but they're young teams that are building. Okay,
right.
They're trying, and they're starting to turn things around. What's a better reward for them? To get in the 9-10 play-in and hope to win a couple games so that you can go get blasted by the Thunder or whatever, or to know that, hey, we've got a young core that's good, and we're about to get in a tournament where if we win it, we're going to get AJ DeBansa or Boozer or what.
Right.
I know what I'd rather have in that situation.
100%. Yeah. And it pops up teams that have already traded their picks, potentially their lottery picks, all those things that are not protected and things like that. You'd have to work through that a little bit.
Sure.
Because, I'm not going to try to win a tournament when the Lakers have my lottery pick, if I'm the Mavs, so to speak.
Right.
But you have to work things. I think those are things that could probably be worked around to where it's a benefit to actually win at the end of the season than lose.
Yep.
And so, Okay. I had one question here. I don't know if you actually got it on your notes, Matt, but I did want to address this just really quickly here because it's popped up here more as we get closer to the NFL Combine. And look, we talked about it a little bit at the end of the season for Dallas. But they had the biggest question facing them right now. The most pressing question is whether or not they're going to actually apply the franchise tag to George Pickens. It was interesting. Yesterday was the first day that teams could slap the tag on a player. The Cowboys chose not to do it on opening day, and that doesn't mean they're not going to do it today or tomorrow, but they have until March 3rd to make that decision, which gives them exclusive negotiating rights with Pickens up until training camp.
Right.
And the price, the tag price would be $28 million for this year. That is the cap number that goes on that as well. So you'd have $28 million instantly coming out of your cap, which is a huge number to put into your cap, as opposed to signing into a long-term deal and either cutting that in half or more for your salary cap this upcoming year. So the question there is, and Pickens being a free agent, do you slap the free agent tag on him now? Do you try to negotiate through the combine, which is when a lot of this stuff happens, and then tag him at the end of it, and then run the risk of, him saying he's not going to play on the tag and you get a holdout, which is what the exact same situation that happened with Michael Parsons last year. Oh, by the way, they have the same agent.
Yeah.
I'm going back and putting my Cowboys fan hat on here and trying to do this with reason, which you and I both know is very dangerous when you talk about this team, anything within reason.
Yep.
I'm going right up until March the 3rd to see if I can get a deal done. And then if I can't get a deal done, they need to know, okay, if we can't work this out now, let's lay the groundwork for it, and we're going to tag you and then keep working towards August. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. So I don't, my fellow Cowboy fans out there, I don't want anyone getting freaked out that he has not already had the tag placed on him. They have until March 3rd. And the reason why they're delaying this is probably to try and see if they can hammer out a long-term deal, which would be, look, if you're going to do it now and, ease that cap hit a little bit rather than stick that $28 million on him and have him play on that. And it takes away from other places on your team where you need to improve.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something, we have things we defer to each other on, right, on the show. You defer to me on college basketball all the time, this sort of thing, and especially the whole inner workings of managing a team. I'm going to defer to you, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what they do. I love what you said about, well, here's the sensible thing, but or here's the most likely thing. But I will say
around here,
I will say I agree. Obviously, everybody knows the defense is what's got to be addressed, but on no level could you have looked at this season and thought, I don't know about the acquisition of George Pickens. Man, that one worked. That one absolutely worked. And so it's a worthwhile conversation.
Talk about tanking. If they hadn't had Pickens was a tank. I mean, he was an anti-tank for the Cowboys this year. He alone probably gave them at least 2 to 3 wins, I would think. And so we're talking about the difference between probably picking 12th or ppicking 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
And look, I'm never one of those, or I haven't been one of those who says, okay, you devote $50 million of your salary cap to one position, other than quarterback. But I've changed my tune on that because I do believe with Pickens in the fold, it opens everything else up and gives them maybe the most explosive offense potentially in the NFL. All they got to do is fix their defense, and they're kind of back in the mix, They got to get this figured out because, again, they don't want another Micah situation hanging over them into training camp, in my opinion. And part of that begins with this question: are we going to tag you if we don't get a long-term deal done, or are we going to let you hit free agency and lose you completely? Which is not what Jerry Jones is going to do. I can promise you that. He's going to find a way to have George Pickens in Cowboys training camp or holding out from it come August. So all right. Moving on now to our segment, which we like to call the back page. Matt, you already alluded to it a little bit about what your back page looks like today. Go ahead and share that with the rest of us.
Yeah, so just kind of some thoughts from senior night now that I've had a minute to kind of process. Like I said, it was kind of really, really busy. I know you know about all these, and especially in sports when it's your last kid. It was it was a wild night because it was one of these deals where, like, you got all this stuff going through your head. Like, for one, we'd already clinched the playoffs, which is huge. So we didn't need to win. We couldn't improve ourselves by winning, but also, don't you want to win on senior night? And we trailed most of the game and ended up pulling it out by 1 point. You know, you look at, hold on, sorry, I got a phone call and everything kind of dorked out for a second. You look at, obviously the emotions of it, but what I really want to point out, I think more than anything, is it's not so much this way in high school sports, but it does get this way in high school football around here. I think it's one of these, well, if you didn't win a championship, was it a good year? Right. And we see that in the NFL a lot. We see that at the higher level a lot. We don't see it quite as much in high school sports, but Marshall basketball has really been a struggle ever since COVID. Like, I'm talking about, the boys have never won until this year. Since COVID, the boys have not won more than 4 district games in a season. They went 9-7 in district this year, earned the 4 seed, the 4 spot, and the 2 seed in the small tournament. And I've got a son who loves basketball, and even though he could play other sports, he just chose basketball. And so what he just chose, the only sport he chose, was kind of one of those. He just chose it in a season where it was one of the lowest sports we had at the school. And could tell he thought about hanging it up and just going to play golf. He's decent at golf, or getting back into baseball maybe, or something else. And he stuck it out. I'm really grateful for, and I want to give a shout out to Maverick head coach Jermaine Boyd. This is a man who is Marshall through and through. He played for the Mavericks. Longtime assistant of the great Bobby Carson. He's been to a lot of playoff games with Bobby Carson as an assistant. This is his 2nd year as the head coach, and now he's getting to go for the first time as a head coach, which I think is, we recognized him last night. I think that was a worthwhile recognition. But just to see look, we're playing one of the, who we're playing? We're playing Anna, the team, the girls team that just beat the number 3 team in the state, Whitehouse. So it may all end Monday night. I don't know, but we got a win on his last home game. And I don't know where this program is going to go, but if they're going to get back to a perennial playoff program, which they were back in the 2000 to 2020, to know that you're a part of what started getting it back. And so much of life is, and you and I know this in church and in ministry and things like that, is we all want the big step, and we don't celebrate the little steps along the way. And last night and what this team did was something worth celebrating, and they may be done Monday night, and in the annals of Texas high school basketball, it's just a blip. But there was something that at the end of the day, some kids and some coaches and a community, I think, can be really proud of, and I thought that was cool.
You always want your senior night above anything else to mean something. Yeah. Whether that's personally, whether that's as a community, as a team, you're honoring those seniors one way or the other, and you want it to mean something.
Yeah.
And it's always best. The best night is when senior night happens on the last night, and but that's not the end. You are playing another game. And so that is that's always a tip of the cap to your seniors for getting you there. It's always a tip of the cap to your coach for leading you there. And all of that came together for you guys last night, and I'm happy for the Mavs and my friends over there. I know Coach Boyd, worked with him for several years, during the years where he was sitting over there on the bench and trying to keep Coach Carson in games, and that was that was a full-time job in and of itself.
Yes.
Those who know Coach Carson, but had some really, really good basketball teams there. between 2012 and 2020, basically, there was probably 2 or 3 there that were really, really good. Best in the district champs type teams. And so, and Coach Boyd was a lot behind that. And the fact that he's now getting his own program and actually now starting to see the success of that, man, it's all good for you guys. So, we'll cover that a little bit more as we go into next week with you guys playing on Monday. And but again, best of luck to the Mavs and all of our area teams that are still on the court as we move into, my gosh, the back end of February and into March. The year's moving along here. Okay. Few things here on my back page I just want to make mention of before we move into our final segment. But this was interesting to me yesterday, and I think it's just a portent of things to come in college football. But Texas and Arizona State are now actively looking to cancel their 2032 and 2033 out of conference contract and series. I think you're going to see that a lot, particularly for both of these teams. Number one, Texas would get no benefit, most likely, from playing Arizona State, which is a upper half right now, Big 12 team, but not necessarily one of your top 10 type programs. Why would you want to play a team like that in out of conference if it really does you no good, win or lose? And kind of the same thing with Arizona State. They really are not looking to come to Austin, probably in particular. And that's just kind of the way things are going in college football right now, particularly with these super conferences. And as tough as conference play is, everybody's got an eye toward that playoff, and you don't want to be tripping up in a non-conference setting. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that coming down the pike. I think it's a little bit too close to the game to think about, again, canceling, say, an Ohio State or even a Michigan next year for Texas.
Yeah.
You're going to start. I think the Notre Dame series is probably in danger. Coming up here in, I think, 3 years.
Yeah.
Interesting to see how that goes out. Some more local stuff here real quickly out at ETBU. Their baseball team goes down to Houston last night and takes an impressive 7-0 victory. That game was tied going into the 7th inning, and the Tigers scored 3 runs in the 7th and 8th to improve to 4-1 on the season against St. Thomas. So hats off to Coach Jared Hood and his Tigers out there on the hilltop.
Good win on the road.
Wanted to mention here again, ETBU softball has begun the season at 4-0. They swept former conference rival Belhaven, now an NCAA rival, Belhaven, came to Marshall and got swept. Didn't score a run, Matt, left Marshall with 2 zeros. So the Tigers in softball, of course, are now 4-0 on the season, but now they're becoming road warriors. A 16-game road trip coming up, spread across 3 separate tournaments. One of those is in Georgetown, Texas, and the next weekend it's in Columbus, Georgia, and then they go to Claremont, Florida, I believe, over spring break the next 3 weekends.
Going to be wild.
ETB does not play a home game again until March the 17th. So right at a month from now, they're going to host University of Dallas on the 17th of March, and then they only have, from this date forward, only 5 more home dates out there at Taylor Field. So interesting schedule there for Coach Shirley. And if you've listened to the podcast we've had her on here, it's kind of out of her hands at this point. It's because of their status now as a national power. It's really hard to get people to come to Marshall to play it,
Well, and not only that, but when you have so many non-conference games you have to fill because of the small ASC schedule. But yeah, they've now given up 2 runs in 4 games. So that's pretty solid.
And 0 in the last 3.
That's right.
So and 2 of those 2 runs came in 1 inning, if you recall.
Yep. So they've allowed 1 inning of scoring. Yeah.
Yeah. With a lot of new faces on that team, but the winning just keeps happening. It'll be interesting to see in these tournaments as they get out there. They're going to see some really tough competition, just exactly where this team stands. And of course, just remind everyone, you kind of mentioned it in your back page yesterday about the opening of baseball season, high school baseball season locally. That got started officially on Tuesday. So both baseball and softball are into their regular seasons now. They're coming up now into tournament season. A lot of tournaments going on this weekend. And again, leading up through the spring break until district. And so check your schedules there for your local softball and baseball seasons. And we're going to, Matt, kind of let basketball kind of die down before we really dive into softball and baseball here on the podcast. But again, if you want to follow your local team, particularly in Harrison County and Marion County, you can catch all of that most likely on a daily basis on the Heartbeat of East Texas on Matt's show on KMHT 103.9. Okay, and so I added this real late last night because this came across my Facebook, and I just wanted to mention, and of course, this kind of goes back to what I said at the top of the show with the Astrodome behind me here. So, folks in Marshall, if you were here with us in the 80s and into the 90s, and really, oh my gosh, the last 50, 60 years probably in Marshall, you know the name of Jack Welch. Jack was the color commentator for the Mavs on old KCUL, the forerunner, I think, to KMHT in terms of carrying Marshall or Maverick athletics. In the late 80s, Jack was the color commentator alongside David Simpson in the booth, and he got to call the Mavs all those deep playoff runs that culminated, of course, with that state championship, which was played in the Houston Astrodome in December of 1990.
Yep.
Well, Jack passed away yesterday after a quick battle he had with ALS, and it was interesting because his wife posted the news of Jack's passing, and I immediately texted David Simpson, who lives now in the Wichita Falls area, and asked him had he heard. And then David, of course, called me and kind of gave me some more details onto what's happened with Jack. He was diagnosed with ALS, I believe, officially in December. Here we are, and had been in the hospital now for the last several weeks, and just everything kind of came to a head on Tuesday, and Jack passed away. So I remember a great deal of my childhood and really into my teenage years. Jack called the games when I was playing for the Mavs in the mid '80s, and he was our color commentator. Quite a colorful character, had served some time as a referee, and he let those feelings be known, particularly towards referees on Friday nights. He would call them out from the booth. Could get away with a lot more back then. I don't know. Chase kind of gets away with a lot when it comes to
man.
And most of the time he's right for sure. Anyway, just wanted to make mention of that, that Jack passed away. And I know so many former Mavs and folks in East Texas have many fond memories of Friday nights and Saturdays of listening to Jack on the radio or even meeting him around town. He was a former, I believe, parks director there for the city of Marshall for a long time. Anyway, just wanted to make note of his passing. And again, kind of an homage to him on our show here.
Yeah.
He called, to this point, probably the greatest moment in Marshall Maverick football history that took place in the Astrodome, back when it actually was open and hosting athletic events.
That's pretty cool.
So, again, condolences to Jack's family. I know his sons, Brad and Jeff, his daughter, Racy, and several others, again, involved with that family locally. So our thoughts and prayers are going out to you guys here today. Finally here, we're going to close our show with this little segment that I call This Date in Sports History. We've got a lot here that I'm going to try to run through very quickly. It is February the 18th, of course, in 1922. This is the date that Kennesaw Mountain Landis. You ever heard of Kennesaw Mountain Landis?
No, sir.
Okay, well, he was a federal judge who resigned on this date in 1922 to fully devote himself to his side gig, which was the first commissioner of Major League Baseball. Kennesaw Mountain Landis was the judge who oversaw the 1919 Black Sox scandal in terms of punishment and things like that. He was the one that actually ruled against those guys, and they made him baseball's commissioner from that. And this was the day that he actually resigned his federal judgeship to become and accept that position as Major League Baseball's first ever baseball commissioner.
Wow.
This is also the date in 1978 where 15 athletes gathered at Aloha Tower in Honolulu for what would become known as the first Ironman World Championship. You ever ran an Ironman?
Not to the best of my recollection. I don't know. As I tell my boys when they ask me questions they ought to know the answer to, I say, I'll have to check my journal.
Well, as most things stupid things like this do, these grueling endurance type things, they begin in the military as a debate among soldiers about, who can outlast the other one. This began as Navy personnel who were, of course, stationed at Hawaii, and they wanted to decide who was the best and the most fittest athlete among them. Was it swimmers, the cyclists, or the runners? Well, they just decided to put them all three together and have this race and this event out in Honolulu on this date. And this was the first date that it happened. Of course, that's a 2.4 mile open water swim, a 112 mile bike ride around the island, and then a 26.2 traditional marathon there on the island. Total distance of 140 and a half mile, 140.6 to be exact. The winner would be called the Ironman. The first winner of the race was a man named Gordon Haller, and there were only 15 who began the race and 12 who finished it. So I think that's a pretty good ratio of starters and finishers. Took 11 hours, 46 minutes, and 58 seconds. So there's your first Ironman champion crowned today, Mr. Gordon Haller.
Wow.
Then some news here locally on this date. February the 18th, the Shreveport Pirates were officially granted a franchise in the Canadian Football League. They were the fourth U.S.-based team in the CFL as they began to try and expand into America. The other teams were placed in Las Vegas, Sacramento, and Baltimore. CFL kind of thought they wanted to get into the southern, kind of tap into the southern football market. Shreveport also had a football hungry, very close to East Texas, of course. State Fair Stadium at the time, which was just now Independence Stadium, was available. No NFL competition within 3 hours or so from Shreveport. Kind of a nice market for the CFL to get into, only there were a few things there. Of course, the CFL is played in the summer.
Yep.
And who wants to sit out in the middle of June and watch CFL football in 100-degree plus heat?
No, sir.
Attendance struggled from that, and they had ownership problems just from the very get-go. And so the team only lasted 2 years, and they folded. And then that by 1996, actually, the CFL pulled out of America. The only team that survived was in the Baltimore franchise, which eventually transferred and moved to Montreal to become what is now the Alouettes, the Montreal Alouettes.
Gotcha.
Birthday on this date for auto racing fans in 1898, the birth of Enzo Ferrari. Dino, Italy. He was an Italian race car driver and, of course, the founder, sports car manufacturer, Ferrari, of course. Interesting here, his stated philosophy was this, that racing is in the laboratory. Road cars are the byproduct. So whatever you do on the racetrack, that becomes your road car. And that's kind of what Ferraris are, right?
Yep.
No, I've never had one of those. I know you've probably had a couple in your life.
Doubt it.
Okay. And do you know, and I know you as a fan, I'm not going to give you any hints on this, Matt. Who died on this date in 1998? We're going to test your fandom here for one of your teams, which I know you are a rabid fan of this particular team.
Who died on this day?
I already tell you're struggling with it, which disappoints me.
No, got it. Don't got
this
it.
Date in 1998, which the famed and beloved broadcaster of the Chicago Cubs, Harry Caray, heart attack at the age of 83. You have any Harry Caray stories as a fan of the Cubs?
Several, and I gotta go soon, so I don't have time.
Well, Harry called Major League Baseball games for 53 years. I did not know this, but he was a broadcaster with the Cardinals and the White Sox before coming to the Cubs.
That's right. Two biggest rivals.
But I mean, Harry, of course, popularized the take me out to the ball game at Wrigley Field. Catchphrases such as "Holy cow!" Everybody knows who Harry Caray is, but unfortunately, we lost Harry on this date back in 1998. And this is also the date in history, finally, where in 2001, Dale Earnhardt crashed his car into the wall at Daytona at the Daytona 500 and passed away immediately from injuries received in that accident. I can remember where I was. I'm not a race car fan, but I do remember where I was when I heard the news that Dale Earnhardt passed away.
Yeah.
And I've seen the documentary, and it's heartbreaker. But anyway, he was definitely the epitome of what his nickname was, the Intimidator.
Yep.
And competitor on the racetrack. So he passed away in 2001 on this date. Our final word of the day comes from Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 14. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord's glory as the water covers the sea. No matter how dark or heavy your season of life, take heart. God's glory is spreading farther than the chaos, and you get to live as part of his story. For my co-host, Matt Paul, and this is David Weaver, thanking all of you for listening out there in East Texas and beyond. We'll be back here tomorrow for another edition of From the Press Box on the Right Team podcast. Until then, as always, keep writing your story.